finally to Geeking Out. Sorry I've been away for a while. I am back to talk about one of my favorite games still is Warhammer 40,000. Now you'll notice a couple of years ago I posted a video talking about Warhammer 40,000 6th edition. It had just come out at that time, but now we are in Warhammer 40,000 8th edition. Yeah, it's been a couple of years. In that time, lots of stuff has changed. The gaming shop I was at is shut down. We've got a new shop, gentleman by the name of Robert's running it. He's doing a great job. Several of my friends have moved away, unfortunately, and so the gaming scape has changed a little bit, but my passion for the game has not. With the new edition, we got some fun new stuff, a couple of factions that I really wanted to see get their own books and codexes they have, namely the Thousand Suns Chaos Space Marines, which I'm really excited about. And then, of course, the Space Marines got new stuff to play with. I also have myself a new toy. This is an Imperial Knight. He's a nice, large, pretty amazing piece. I just finished painting him, so I'll go ahead and show you guys some pictures there of him. I'm also working on another faction that they've added to the game with the Space Marines. The way the lore goes is that Roberto Guilliman, sorry for the pronunciation, was in stasis for several years. And in that time, before he was wounded during the Horus Heresy, I will put a link to my video explaining some of the lore down below. But they have decided in the lore to bring him back into the fold. He's one of the original Primarchs of the Emperor, and he and a scientist from the Adeptus Mechanicus decided to create a new brand of Space Marines. They call them the Primaris Space Marines. Again, there's some pictures for you, these miniatures right here. And they are Space Marines times 11. They're stronger, taller, faster, they have stronger armor. They're everything that a Space Marine was and then some. And the models look fabulous, and I've been working on adding some of those to my army, so those have been a lot of fun. Games Workshop, the company that puts out Warhammer and Warhammer, they call it Age of Sigmar now, Warhammer Fantasy, and then Warhammer 40,000. They've changed their attitude towards consumers, and they're a lot more approachable, and that they're taking fans' opinions into consideration when putting forward new codexes and new content. And what's coming out of that is that the player base has gotten a lot larger, and the game with 8th edition has become a lot more approachable, at least I feel it is. The game was far too complex, I felt, even though, like I said, the 6th edition was great, I did enjoy it. 7th edition got really bloated, I felt. They added in ways of having to build your army through detachments. So you'd have to pick pre-built detachments out of the books, and then those would give you special abilities depending on like how big the detachment was. If you bring 5 guys, it does this. If you bring 10, it does that. And they were very, very heavily dependent on those. And they would also put out supplements to the codex, which were just as expensive as the codex itself. So you spend $60 on the base book for your army, and then there's a supplemental book that's also $60, but only gives you enough rules for maybe, say, 5 more models. It didn't make much sense, and I think the 8th edition drop was really nice because they gave us the core rule set, the basics for movement, shooting, and everything else free straight out the gate. You can just download them. They did a lot of events at shops where they gave out these free, what they call battle primers, and it was just a little pamphlet that explained all of the core rules for you. It was directly out of the big rule book. And then they did indexes for each section for each army at $25 a piece. So you had 2 indexes for the Imperium, 1 for Space Marines, and then 1 for everybody else. 1 for Xenos races. I stand corrected. 2 for Xenos races and 1 for Chaos. So, I mean, initially out of the gate, we could play almost immediately. We didn't have to wait on brand new codexes. We didn't have to wait for all these bloated books to come out. And then as time has gone on, they've released new codexes, but at a far smaller price. The books up until the end there were like $60, and now they're closer to like $40 and $45. So it's much more tenable. And then the rule book itself is still $50, $60. Don't quote me on that. I don't remember. But I mean, it's well produced. Like I said, back on the 6th edition books and even the 7th edition books, they were all really great pieces of printing. But honestly, overall, I feel like this edition is what I have been waiting for, because as much as I love to play this game, there are a lot of times where I'll start playing and I'll get so wrapped up and confused about the rules, and then all of a sudden I'm missing beneficial things to me as a player because I'm so distracted with all of this other stuff on the table while my opponent is throwing all this other, special abilities and all this other stuff at me, and I'm like, I have a 3-up armor and I don't know if I can do anything else about that, and I'm searching through my codex and my opponent has to wait on me. And that still happens a little bit, but overall I'm spending less time having to reread things and just being able to play fluidly. I've been able to do that for a couple editions now. It's been really nice. So I wanted to take you through some of the miniatures that I've been working on, talk a little bit deeper about the rules, and just give you guys kind of a primer for the new edition, at least new to me. I know 8th edition's been out for a fair minute, but I think the initial blast of codexes is finally finished. And we've got 3 or 4 more armies to take care of, but the bulk majority of the armies have dedicated books now. So let's take a few minutes and I'll show you all the stuff I've been working on and things I'm excited about, and the new changes that I think are really good to this game. Okay. First things first, we have to talk about one of the newest things they've added to Warhammer 40,000. They added these guys in 7th edition, but these are the Imperial Knights. They are usually part of noble houses. I mean, as the name implies, a knight. So they are part of some of the oldest technology in the Imperium. As far as I understand the lore, these guys helped defend some of the original human colonies, and they would build these guys, they would build the knight suits out of the ships that they came in on. So it was a very interesting part of the lore. So this is my knight. I have decided to make him what's called a knight errant, or a freelancer, a mercenary, if you will. And I have named him Decimus, and I'm really proud of him, just because of the amount and level of detail I've been able to get on this model. I hope it comes clear on I hope it comes through clear on the camera, but it's just the painting this thing, building it. It's been an absolute joy. I decided to go with this blue. It kind of ties in with the rest of my army, this gold trim as well. It's very close to the official Knight Paladin pattern color scheme. I can't remember the name of the house that they would belong to, this color scheme. But the other thing that's been really awesome is thanks to a friend of mine, Mark, he clued me into a website called shapeways.com. And they do custom 3D printing. And for anyone who knows what a knight's supposed to look like, you're going to look at these shoulders and think, those are really odd. And that's because they are created by a third-party creator. They made the 3D models, and they fit onto the knight itself. So you get this awesome level of detail with a 3D printed piece that fits onto the model. So this gives him more of like an individual look. And the other part that I'm real happy about is I was able to magnetize this model. It's perfectly modular with all the other weapon options, and it just comes right off and snaps right back on. The magnets fit very, very well into these pieces. Hardly any modifications at all to get those to work, and they just snap right in. This particular one, let's see if I can get it apart. This piece actually has two different guns that it can go with. And then the arm here comes apart. Excuse my camera work. The arm here comes apart as well. And that piece will come off if I want it to. And then for transport, I also have two weapons on the top that come off. And there's just a magnet embedded up there. And this has a missile launcher and also a twin autocannon on top. And then, of course, the whole piece comes apart if I need to transport him. One thing I will note, though, guys, PVA glue and wood glue, not the same thing. I was mistaken in this. I should have known better. But when I did the basing for this model, you might notice that, like, the edges here are kind of, they're kind of white. And let's see if I can find a chunky spot. Actually, when I picked them up in the video earlier, you could actually hear it. You see how it's kind of popping? There we go. Hear that? It's actually bubbled up off of the base, and it's starting to separate. So I've had to get in there with super glue and actually glue the basing material back down. I've never had to do this with a model before, and I think it's just the fact that I used a wood glue in place of a PVA or white school glue. And it just did not stick to this plastic like I thought it was going to. So, lesson learned. Learn from my mistakes, guys. But otherwise, I had a lot of fun basing this. I use, it's a combination, it's an odd combination of sweeping compound, a black grouting material, you know, just the black powder grout, and these rocks. And silica sand, excuse me, that's the other component for the base part of this. And then the rocks are actually from what's known as wall stones for doing landscaping. They're cast in such a way where these two cavities in the middle. And I can get in there with my with a screwdriver or something and scrape those out, because I work at a Home Depot. So I can get in there and scrape those out, and I use those as part of my basing material, and it matches really, really well to the rest of the material here. So it gives that kind of like volcanic rock look. And overall, I think the piece just turned out really, really good. So hope you guys enjoyed seeing him. And let's move on to the next piece. Oh. One thing I forgot to do is show the scale of this guy. Now, here is a basic Space Marine. You know, basic size Space Marine Sergeant. And here he is next to that knight. This has 1 wound. This has 24 wounds. Probably about the 12 or maybe about 20 points. 500 points. Enough said. Okay, moving on, next in the list are some of my Primaris Space Marines. Now, to give you guys another sense of scale, I'm going to bring Mr. Sergeant back into the frame here. This, again, basic size Sergeant, and compared to a Primaris Space Marine, let's see if we can get a better look at them, you can tell that they are taller. The basic armor has been updated. The armor of the Space Marine has been updated to be a little bit more sleek, a little bit more angular. It's a gorgeous design take on a classic Space Marine design. Because you can see, like with the Sergeant here, you've got some design bits they're pretty iconic. You know, if you know anything about Space Marines, they've looked like this for a very long time. And now you give us these Primaris Space Marines, and they just look fabulous. And the other thing that makes me so giddy and happy is one of my favorite weapons in Warhammer 40,000 is plasma weaponry. Specifically, plasma cannons, plasma pistols, and a plasma gun, which I don't have right here with me, but they shoot, well, as the name implies, superheated balls of plasma energy. Now, they used to do a blast template. It was about 3 inches
in diameter. But what they've done is they've taken away the blast templates and made it so it does D3 shots. It also does a lot of minuses to armor value. So if you had someone, well, take a basic Space Marine has a 3 up armor save, so you have to roll 3 or better on a D6 to ignore a wound. These plasma cannons -3 to that roll, so that takes it down from takes it down from 3, 4, 5 to a 6. So you have to roll a 6 to save against one of these weapons. It's been so much fun, but the one thing that a lot of people did not like about plasma weapons, and I think I covered it in my other video, but I'll explain real quickly, is that when you're rolling to shoot with a plasma weapon, they, through the lore, they have said that the plasma weapons are ancient tech, and they're not as stable as a lot of their contemporary counterparts. And that being, if you rolled a 1 while you were shooting, it would get hot and potentially kill the user. It would explode or something really dramatic. And what they've done is they've taken that away to a degree. To fire the weapon normally, there's no minuses. You don't have to worry about gets hot. That was the rule that it used to have. Now, you fire normally, it doesn't matter if you roll a 1 or not. It's a strength 7 weapon. But if you want to, you can do what they called a supercharged shot, and that opens up the gets hot rule. So if you roll a 1 while it's supercharged, they take what's known as a mortal wound, and it just basically says in the line, model is slain. No saving against it, the guy explodes. Used to be you could make an armor save against it and you were fine. But for some reason, I just love the look of these weapons. I really do, and I always have, and haters be hating on the plasma weapons, but they're a lot better in this edition. And what they've added with the Primaris Marines are these guys. These are known as Hell Blasters. They have, they're called plasma incinerators. And I think there's a couple other options that you can take with a plasma incinerator, different variants of it, but it's a rapid fire weapon that fires 30 inches. So to explain rapid fire real briefly, it's at half your damage you get double the shot, at half your range you get double shots. So for a 30-inch weapon, if I'm at 15 inches away from my target, I get to fire twice. These things are strength 7, the -3 to your armor value, and they're just ridiculously good. I love these guys. Plus, they just look awesome. The weapons themselves are just so cool looking. I can't get over it. Now, the other thing I was telling you about shapeways with my guy over there, my knight. I had those shoulders made up. What initially clued me into this idea was the fact that I have been trying to create a custom insignia for my my Space Marines for a long time, the Paladins. And initially I just started with something that I could put manually onto the shoulders. So it was a 5-pointed star. I'm sorry, this is very rough. But it's a 5-pointed star is something that a lot of people can draw fairly easily. So I would do that with a felt tip Sharpie, and then I would just color it in with the Paladin blue. This was great for a while until somebody, I can't remember who it was now, they came right up to my table and they looked at my miniatures and they says, "Oh, are you a Cowboys fan?" No, I am not a Cowboys fan. Please do never accuse me of such a thing. So it had to change. It had to change immediately. So I got an idea in my head to create this new symbol for the Space Marines, and I was able to get them 3D printed. And this is what I call the eclipsing star of the Space Marines. And I've written some lore around this, but I'll go into that in a separate video. I want to talk lore about each of my Space Marine factions, but it's the 4-pointed black star, the red sun being eclipsed by the blue moon that the Paladins call home. And I came up with this design, and then I was able to send this off to one of the creators on Shapeways, and I told him the story about why I was making this design, and he laughed, and he sent me an email back saying I fast-tracked your project because I'm a Philadelphia fan and I get it. So I was like, that's great, man, that's so cool. So when I got these in, I was just so stoked. And it's one of the coolest things ever, because it's a 3D insignia that looks like it came off of the frame that these guys came on. And it's just so... I've been playing this game since 2002, and typically, if you find anything like this, it's official Games Workshop stuff, and you're stuck with the insignias for like the Dark Angels and stuff like that, and that's molded into the shoulders. But now I can buy 3D printed shoulders, and I have a frame on the way that has the Eclipse Star in a flat pattern, so I can put them on tanks and all sorts of cool stuff like that. So that's one of the things I'm most excited about, is my army finally looks like my own. I'm not borrowing iconography from other armies just because I have to. So that is just so exciting. So the Primaris Marines, specifically the Hellblasters, very excited about these guys. All right, and moving on to another thing that I'm really, really excited about. This is my Chaos Army. They are the antithesis of my Space Marines, because they are half of my Space Marines corrupted by the Chaos God Tzeentch. Lord of sorcery, of change, of manipulation and knowledge. So what I've been able to do is kind of take the colors of my army and pervert them into this dark blue, kind of purple type of look to everything. And one of the first changed was my Demon Prince here. This is Samar. He was a librarian of the Paladins, but he discovered an ancient Tzeentchian artifact and was corrupted by it, and he fell to the whispers of power and of promise by Tzeentch, and he was, for bringing his fellow Space Marine brothers into the fold, under Tzeentch's influence, he was given a demonhood and brought into a Demon Prince. And one of the things that I've done to signify that he was a Space Marine of my Paladins was this shoulder here. I kept some of the green on there, and I just made it look like it's in like mid-change and it's all dirtied up. And I was able to add this to his hand. It's like the two little heads, like he's conjuring them. And I'm very proud of this model, incredibly so. It turned out so good, and I'm really, really happy with it. He's got the wings on there, and I added in this cloak with some what's known as green stuff. It's a 2-part epoxy putty. Yeah, it turned out so good. So there's Samar the Demon Prince, and the Lord of Change, these giant demons, like bird-like creatures that Tzeentch, they're like his lieutenants in a way. This was what was locked inside that artifact. He was sealed away in it, and I had a name picked out for him, and it escapes me at the moment. But I'll add it onto the screen there when I remember. But he was the Whispering that Samar followed. And this particular model is an older Lord of Change. They've actually made these guys much larger now. The base is about double this size, and they're much taller. They're about as tall as my Knight, actually. Here again, I just want to show some scale. I'll bring Samar back in here, and then there's my Lord of Change. So they're actually about this tall now, and they're fantastic looking models. Check out the picture. But overall, I was very happy with how this turned out, mostly because of what I was given to work with. I got this from a player who got it very early on in his gaming career, and the amount of work it took to get this thing back together the way it was supposed to be was just insane. The amount of super glue and custom like bits and building I had to do to get him to stand properly and to get the wings back on here. I had to do a lot of cleanup on the pieces because I mean the super glue was just caked on so heavily. It took forever. All the pinning that I had to do on this thing just took me hours and hours, but it's held together. I'm very, very proud of that fact. You know, this piece of wire here, I've had to, I think that's a piece of brass rod I had to basically shove up his butt to get him to stand up. But overall, I mean, it's just the colors came out great. I'm very proud of the wings, the fading and the color transitions in the wings. Very, very proud of that. And it's a full metal miniature, so he's pretty heavy. This weighs about a pound or two. He's pretty heavy. I mean, hear the thud when he hits the table. But very, very happy with that one. And a work in progress here. Oh, by the way, painters, if you go down to your local hobby shop and they have one of these things, get it. It's one of the coolest things ever. It has an adjustable piece here on the top that you can fit a miniature into, and it holds it nice and firm, so you can hold it and rotate your miniature while you're working, and you don't have to cramp up your hands or, you know, get fingerprints all over the model while you're working. If it's wet, you can just say, oh, okay, and I'll just set it down and let it dry without having to worry about dropping it or anything. But onto the model itself. This is one of the new Thousand Sons rubric Marines. If anyone knows anything about the lore of the Thousand Sons, they were part of the Horus Heresy. They were starting to mutate because of Tzeentch's power, and the sorcerer Ahriman cast what's known as the rubric of Ahriman, and instead of stopping everyone from mutating, he was able to do that. But what ended up happening is that he ended up vaporizing everyone and trapping them in their armor, and this is the result. And the rubric Marines are kind of like mindless automaton. They just walk on the battlefield, don't really care much about what's happening except point and shoot. Again, my color scheme, that bronze color with this dark blue, and I'm experimenting with the shoulders to see maybe I could add, initially I was doing this purple wash over this bone color, but I might just keep it as it is and just wash the outside of it and keep it the way it is. But overall, I mean, just these new models are fantastic. The design, the detail, it's awesome. I just love them. This is another cool thing that they brought out. Actually, right at the end of 7th, we got these models, but now I finally got a full codex for Thousand Sons. I'm very, very happy about this. There is so much cool stuff in here for these guys. It's the most love that the poor Tzeentchian Marines have never gotten. Yeah, I don't think they've been good even back in like 3rd and 4th edition. They just did not get the love. So now finally these guys are contenders. They can play with the big boys. The one model that I'm very excited to see come out of this is this big guy right here. They call him Big Red, the Crimson King. This is Magnus the Red. He was one of the original Primarchs turned into demon. As you can see from the scale in the picture, he's a big dude. Can't wait to get one and paint him up, but that's going to be a time for another story. So, back several months ago, I was gaming with a bunch of friends of mine, and one of them asked to borrow one of my captains. Sure, here you go. And then at the end of the day, the captain ended up missing. We didn't know whose box he ended up in or whatever. So I was kind of like, all right, it's fine. But then I was getting messages from this other player, a good friend of mine named Owen, and he felt so bad about losing that model, and he said, let me replace him for you. I was like, all right, well, here's what the set is now, because it was an older miniature. And they said, you know what, I got an idea, we'll get you something really cool. I was like, all right, cool. So they reached out to a third-party manufacturer. They do models that fit in 40K, but don't infringe the copyrights. So they look right, they look like they fit, but they're completely unique at the same time. And this is one of their, I think they call them like a scarab sorcerer or something. It's by a company called Grim Skull. They put their logo on the bottom of the base here. But I think they're out of Germany, I come to find out. But this guy is so cool. He's meant to look like Magnus did before he was turned into a demon. I left, actually, no, I think I put all the pieces, all the bits on him, except for, I think there's like an extra cloak or something that was supposed to go on his back that I didn't opt for. But overall, I mean, the model is turning out great. I love how the details really pop. Again, I'm doing that layering technique on everything, and I've just been real happy with it. You know, the glowy power glaive that he's got here, and what I've ended up doing is that this is the Paladin's chapter master. This is Cecil. He unfortunately was corrupted by the demons and Samar, and but against his will. And part of the story is that they were able to bring him back into the fold. So he doesn't really go full demon, but this is him corrupted by Tzeentch and being the dark sorcerer that he is. So I field him as a facsimile for the character Ahriman. And he can ride a Tzeentchian disc. So what I've done is I've magnetized him from his regular base, and I'm going to build a disc for him that he can fit onto so he can fly around the battlefield. But it's made out of complete resin, so it's pretty light. It's not that heavy of a model, but it looks fantastic. And just the detail is just amazing, and I'm so happy with this model. And it just, I can't wait to, you know, unleash him on some of my friends and watch him throw eldritch fire everywhere. So anyway, there's some of my new Chaos guys I'm really excited about, and let's move on.
So, this is kind of my re-up for Warhammer 40,000. I'm going to put forth some more content on these guys, and I want to talk about the lore of each of the armies that I've built. I've been able to kind of follow the lore that's already there and come up with something pretty unique. So until then, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Give me a thumbs up down below. Any comments or questions, please let me have it. And I'll see you guys in the next one.